Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Elizabeth Savion, and thank you for joining me on this week's episode. On this week's episode, I have a very special guest getting a fresh perspective on men's mental health. So I'm very excited for today's guest, Donald Sims, that is a mental health therapist. So thank you so much for joining me on Beauty Marks Podcast, Donald.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
For those that don't know you, can you share a little bit about what you're passionate about? Aside from us, we actually did go to high school together, so I do know him from a long time ago, but we have kept up with social media over the years. And so finding out that he's also into mental health, it was really exciting. So for those that don't know you, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Like she mentioned, we went to high school together. So I graduated 2013. So after I graduated in 2013, I left early actually. So I left that summer. I went to Florida A&M for summer classes. So I went to Florida A&M for 4 years to get my undergrad in social work. And then after I graduated from there, went to Florida State and got my master's in social work. After I left Florida State, I went back home for a little bit, started working at a program for teens who are on probation and get sent to a program from the courts. So I was there for a short period of time, approximately 2.5, 3 months. So after I left there for a better opportunity. I got a better opportunity to come to Tampa to work for Chrysalis Health as an outpatient therapist. But I was also working with the same population, except they weren't sent to a program. They were just on probation. So I worked there for about 2.5 years. And then I just felt like, I've been there for so long and, I was still early in my career. So I'm like, you know what, I need to expand where what I'm learning, and I need to expand my knowledge and start working with a different population to get where I want to be, right? Because I haven't worked with adults yet. So I decided to leave that job. And then now I'm currently working at a rehab facility here in Tampa. And I've been there since March, and here I am now.
Nice. I see that you're very passionate about helping others, yes. But is that what exactly drew you to, helping in social work and others?
So I would say so. It's probably a mixture of a variety of things. Because so originally, I didn't know if a therapist wasn't really my radar. I didn't really know much about them. I originally wanted to work like in a foster care system because I was a foster care kid. So being a foster care kid, I knew the ins and outs, and I knew, kind of like how messed up it could be, some of the struggles that the kids go through and things like that. So when I was, even in high school, I told myself, I want to work in the foster care system. I wasn't really sure what I would be doing there. I just know I wanted to work with kids in the foster care system. So as I started doing more research in it, and then I started learning about mental health, learning about, how these kids struggle from depression, anxiety, those kind of things. And I'm like, interesting. I didn't really think about this dynamic, the mental health part of it. So as I got into school, I started digging more deeper into the mental health aspect. And then I learned about, the significance of it and how a lot of people don't really know about it. And it's not something that is really talked about. So I just became more interested in it. And then eventually I decided to take that career path. And I feel like it was the best thing ever because I really love what I do and I'm very passionate about it. So here I am.
Were you very self-aware, growing up, with mental health? Was that something that you were talked about? Did people talk to you about that?
No, because the thing is with mental health, I think we're just now starting to get a good grasp of it and get a good understanding. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's happened recently, different athletes are speaking about it. Even rappers or famous people are becoming more vocal about it. So I feel like now is a time where more people are starting to realize, what it is, how important it was. But me as a teenager about, 10 years ago or so, I didn't know what mental health was. I didn't know what depression was. I thought I was just sad. I didn't know what anxiety was. I didn't know anything about it. And my mom didn't know anything about it, but I can't blame her because you can't be mad at somebody for what they don't know, So I really didn't know much about it. It took, studies, going to school, doing my own research and talking to others to learn as I got older. I had to basically teach myself and learn and learn from school. So now, like I said, this is when more people are starting to realize what it is and how significant it is in people's lives.
That's very true. What do you think are like some stigmas about mental health, or even just myths about mental health now that you're like more aware of it?
Stigmas. Well, I mean, some of the common stigmas I've heard are like, you know, people who have mental health are dangerous. There's that stigma out there, or they're weird, or it's not a real thing. And to bring religion into it, I feel like it goes it's a big thing in like people who are religious also. They don't, for example, I've met a lot of Christians who don't believe in like depression and things like that. So there's a variety of stigmas around that's been going around, but the thing is, like, most of them are myths, are not true. And the thing is, I feel like with most people, you just have to do your own research and kind of get the truth, because a lot of things you hear, it's just he say, she say, and there's no facts behind it. So I think it's just like a thing where people need to do their own research and be like more open-minded, and figure out what the truths are versus what the myths are. And the myths, they're not facts. They're just people just talking, you know. So there's that.
I've definitely heard that in religious circles, like when people say like, oh, depression, like either that's a spirit or that's just something in your head. Like that's just something that you're like letting take over because you're weak, you know, or you're just like mentally not strong. And at least I don't know how it was for you growing up, but I know for me, in a Hispanic household, that's something. Mental health is just something that is like, you don't cry, you know, you don't show emotion. The only emotion that's okay is really anger, you know, or being loud, or being, you know, that was kind of like how people showed it in my area. And so I can't even imagine like other circles, you know, as well. And I know for men it's even different. So how was that for you growing up?
Well, growing up, like I said, because the thing with me, I lived a different life. So I was in foster care for, you know, for many years of my childhood. So I can't remember like exactly how each individual family was. But overall, like I said, most of them, I've never heard anything about mental health from them. But I can say, you kind of hit on the nail though. Weakness as a man is one of the things I always hear, you know, like stop being weak, or, you know, you just, you know, be a man, be strong. That's one of the things I hear a lot, especially when it comes to males. And that's one of the biggest things I feel is the reason why males don't say anything about it. So with that being said, it's just something that we have to continue to educate people on, and hopefully they can, you know, start learning about it and stop those, you know, start spreading those myths and stigmas.
How you mentioned about the foster care, is that something that you're willing to share about?
I am now. Honestly, it took me a few years, because like even people at the high school with I felt close to, I've never said anything about
I
it.
never knew that. To be honest, that's the first time I've heard that.
Right.
I mean,
but now that I'm getting older, I'm becoming more transparent about it, because honestly, the reason I can be open about it now is like I have the closure that I need now, because I provided the closure for myself. And back then, you know, I was still hurt, and I was still, you know, holding a lot of things inside. And, you know, it was something that I did not want to talk about or even, you know, put out there. And also, I never wanted people to feel sorry for me. So I never mentioned it because of that. And there's, you know, many other reasons. But now that I'm older, I don't mind talking about it, because I feel like if I share my story, there can be somebody I can help, and you never know. So that's why I'm transparent now.
Definitely. What do you think, what are stigmas of people in foster care? Because maybe you were like how you said you were kind of like you didn't want people to feel bad for you. Do you think that that's something that people think, that if you're in foster care, like you're supposed to have a certain route for your life or something?
I mean, I don't know if it's a certain route, but there are, I mean, I don't know what the stats say, but kids who are in foster care, they do tend, like a lot of them do end up in the wrong path for a variety of reasons, but it's not always the case, you know? So I don't know if there's specific stigmas when it comes to foster care, but as somebody who's lived through it, I feel like a lot of the negative things that you hear are true. Because I've worked with kids also who also have been in foster care. I'm working with a kid right now. He's not a kid, he's like 22 or whatever. And he's been through the same things I've been through with the system and all that. And he's telling me the same things that I already been through. So I wouldn't say it's myths, but a lot of the bad things that you hear, from experience, I would say is true. And that's why they really need to address it, because it's not all great in foster care. But I don't know how it is now.
Yeah.
I've been out of it for so long. I don't know if it's gotten any better. I don't know, what changes they've made. But I know back then it wasn't really good, and they need to, they need to, pick up on that slack a little bit.
Hmm. Did you go to multiple foster cares? Like, were you
Mhm.
raised by one, like the mom that you have? Like, is that your foster mom?
No, so I went through a few of them actually growing up.
Hmm.
So my mom currently, she adopted me when I was 14. Um, it's kind of funny because she was a foster parent, right?
Hmm.
And I stayed with her for about a year. I was bouncing, a few foster homes, and then I ended up, on her doorstep. So I stayed with her for about a year, but she had two other kids, and she was a single mom. So it was hard on her. It was
Hmm.
hard. She, struggling to make ends meet. So one day she was just like, we really care for you, but the three kids, it's a little too much for me. So you're gonna have to get up on out of here. Not like that, but like, just have to.
Hmm.
We can't, I can't take care of you anymore. And it hurt because I love this woman. She was really great. So I left her, went to another foster home. It was a really old couple. I was miserable there. I was miserable. This was in Prince Indiana actually. And
Oh,
then
wow.
I was with them for, I can't remember how long I was with them, maybe a year or so. But my caseworker used to come to me, and she would ask me, how things are going, but she would ask me in front of them. So when they're in front of you and they're asking you,
You're like,
like,
everything's good.
yeah, things are good. But she kind of picked up on my body signals and my facial
Mm,
expressions. So she took me to the room, and then she sat me down and ate down, like, how are things here? Like, you okay?
mm,
I just let it out. Like, I'm miserable. I'm depressed. I'm
mm,
sad. I'm all the above. Like, you need to get me the hell out of here. Like, I have to go.
mm,
So I left that home. And then too many stories. I left that home. I went to another home. And I stayed with another family. They were a wealthy family, but they weren't very good people. So I stayed
mm.
with them for about, how long was I there? Probably a year and a half or so. And they actually adopted me too. It's kind of funny. I never knew you could. I didn't know you could unadopt a kid. Did you know that?
No,
No
I didn't.
idea. So I was with them, and me and the other kid didn't get along. He was not. He wasn't a good person either. He had a lot of issues. Spoiled brat. You know,
Hmm.
bad character. I'm not gonna say his name, but he didn't have a good character. So we used to bump heads or whatever. And then one day they're like, it's not working, whatever the case may be. So I got to get up out of here too. And it was crazy because I had a name change and everything. Like it was a real adoption. I had a name change
Wow.
and everything. And then after I left them, I was still keeping in contact with my current mom. So I was still keeping
Hmm.
in contact with her. Um, so when I left that home, she came and got me again. I went to live with her again. And yeah, and then, she didn't let me go from then. She adopted me at 14.
Hmm.
And then here I am, still,
Wow.
I know, right?
And you have your siblings, so that's your
Right.
two sisters?
Well, I have a sister and a brother.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Wow. That's amazing though, that you
Yeah,
had like a long lasting, home after that.
absolutely. It's a blessing, man. I think about it like just growing up, a lot of anger and a lot of hatred in my heart. But I realized the more I had that in me, I wasn't happy. And
Mm,
when you're doing that to yourself, you're only hurting yourself. Like, but I
yeah.
learned to let go of things. I learned to forgive, even if it's hard. Those who've harmed me, I learned to
Mm,
forgive them and just move on with my life. And when I learned to do that, I noticed I'm just happy, and I've been happy for a long time now, honestly, and I can't say for a specific reason, but I know one of the big reasons why is because I let things go and forgave
mm,
others and moved on. So
mm.
that's me.
How did you navigate that like through high school? Because I remember that you were like very into sports, you were very into
Mhm.
like clubs, and I feel like you were very on top of everything at school. So
Yeah,
how
I
did you
was.
navigate that going through that? Like honestly, thank you so much for being transparent because I never knew that about you, and that
Mhm.
gives me like such a different perspective of you
Mhm.
because you always were someone that was always smiling at
Yeah.
school, like always super fun to be around. Like so it's just crazy that like you really never know what someone's going through. So how did you navigate that in high school?
Honestly, Elizabeth, like I think about that question myself, and honestly, I think this is just how God made me, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Because sometimes I ask myself that question, like, damn, Donald, like all the, the nonsense you've been through, especially growing up, like how you're just so happy and smiling. But my thing is like, man, like the older I get, I realize like life is short. So, and I don't want to be miserable in life. Like I want to be happy.
Mm.
So no matter what I go through, I try to keep a positive attitude and just be happy because I don't like being upset. I don't like arguing, even like when I have a girlfriend. I don't like arguing. I don't like none of that stuff. Like I want to be happy. I want to be like, joyful in life, and I want to live life to the fullest. So that's why I told you, growing up, I learned to let go of things. I noticed when I kept all those things in, I was unhappy,
Mm-hmm.
I was miserable, I was angry, I was depressed. So I let those things go, and I just realized that there's more to it in life than just dwelling on negative things. So I just try to focus on the positive and live life how I want to live life.
And what you're doing now, like you're giving back and you're helping other people that have been in your situation, like how you said, and
Right.
kind of spreading awareness of mental health. So that's amazing.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts then, aside from, now kind of getting a full perspective of like how you were growing up? First, like what are things that you feel like men kind of deal with a lot that kind of make them act as a barrier for them to reach out to help, to get help?
So here's the thing with men. I don't know if it's because of how we're raised or being a man, the stigma of being a man is, you have to be a strong man and a tough guy and thug it out and, that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's that or it's our pride, but I've noticed how hard it is for men to reach out for help. And it's hard for men to express themselves. And the thing is with that being said, I don't know the exact numbers because they flip year to year,
Mm-hmm.
but suicide rates among men are way higher than women. I
Mm-hmm.
think the last stat I saw was 60-40.
Mm-hmm.
So men are most likely to commit suicide way higher than women are. And there's a reason for that. It's because men, we don't express ourselves. We don't tell people, what we're going through. We don't speak about our problems.
Mm-hmm.
We hold everything in. Even if we're battling depression, we don't say anything because we don't want to feel weak. We think we're supposed to be strong and just get over it. And some men might feel like I'm a guy, so no one's going to care about the stuff I go through. So there's a lot of reasons that go behind it, and we have to teach, even like starting young, teach young kids, the young boys out there, that it's okay to be vulnerable. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be, the macho man all the time. Like it's okay to cry. It's okay to
Mm-hmm.
tell yourself, I need help. It's okay to talk to your mom, your dad, a friend about things you're going through. Like stop holding things in because I tell people all the time that I work with, everything you hold in is gonna come out eventually in a way, whether that way is through violence, through substance abuse, through good ways, through therapy, through journaling, whatever the case may be, it is gonna come out a way.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to figure out the positive ways for those things to come out. So you have to teach yourself that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to talk about your problems. You don't have to be strong every day, single day, and let things, kind of like just act like it didn't happen and pretend like it's not bothering you. And that's what we need to teach our men and our boys, especially as they get older and they start growing in life. It's okay to be vulnerable, and that's the number
Mm-hmm.
one opinion.
Mm-hmm. And how can we create a space for men to do that? So, like, as a woman, right? How
Uh-huh.
can I provide a space for a man in my life to be willing to open up and be
Mhm.
willing to say, hey, I'm going through this?
I think it's all communication, Elizabeth. Like if you're with somebody, for example, you have to let them know that, hey, if you are experiencing any sort of problem, it's okay to talk to me. Like I feel like communication is the key when it comes to that because I don't think a lot of people discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
And men especially, I feel like struggle with communicating those things that I've heard guys talk about it like that's a woman thing or things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I feel like communication is key, letting them know, hey, if you're discussing something, if you're experiencing something, it's okay to talk about it, having sit downs with them, open conversations. Even if you want to lead by example, then do that as well. If you're experiencing some things that are bothering you, you can speak with him about it. But that's like the older like adults. But I feel like with kids, it's going to be the parents' responsibility to teach that to their kids. Like if you have a young boy, young male, sit with him, talk to him, ask him how he's feeling. How did that make you feel? Are you experiencing any sort of negative thoughts? Like, let them know it's okay to talk about these things, because I don't think a lot of parents even talk about certain things with kids. So I feel like the earlier you can mold them, the better it'll be for them as they get older in life, and it'll become something that's normal to them. Because right now, I don't think it's normal or for young males or even older males to share how they feel and things that they're going through in life. So it starts there, in my opinion.
That's a good point. I think hopefully in this generation, as discussions happen, as people become more aware, I really hope that we're able to have those conversations with our future generations, and kind of make that happen and connect those gaps. How do you think it is between you and your male friends? Like, do you guys talk about, like, if you're going through a heartbreak, or if you're going through a loss, or if you're going through some grief or some issue, like, are you guys able to navigate, like, to be there for each other? Or do you think that that's still hard even within your own close friends to do that?
I feel like with my close friends, it's something that we do. But the thing is, like, what I've noticed, like with my friends, I have to check up on them. I have to reach out to them. Like, hey, like, even for example, I had a friend that we have a group chat. I haven't heard from him from, like, for like 3 weeks or so. So I'll just send a text in the group chat, hey man, you okay? How you doing? Like, things like that. So even a small gesture like that can be a big for people. So I feel like with my friends, they're pretty transparent. If they experience a breakup, we talk about the breakup, like, what went left, how you feeling, things like that. So I feel like we should do that for all our friends. If you don't, because even with guys, I don't know if girls do the same thing, but we don't have to talk every day. I don't talk every day with my close friends. It can be 2 weeks, even a month. But the thing is, when we do talk, we're back to square one. We're good. There's no, there's nothing that, that there's no, why you haven't talked to me in in a month or so. We're always good. So during those times, I'll send them a text. How you guys doing, man? You guys all right? So things like that are small to some people, but I think it's big. So even starting that way, I think it's huge.
I think it's like checking in on people. I saw
Absolutely.
something the other day that said, like, if you think about someone, just send them a text. Like, in that moment, just be like, hey, just checking in on you, seeing how you're doing. Because I know life can get busy, but it's very important to try to foster some of those relationships that you value.
Absolutely.
And especially, I mean, like, I have probably a handful of friends that I actually like communicate with, like,
Right.
with memes, or by sending them something, or hey, just thinking about you. But those relationships, those places that you feel safe, is very important. Like,
Correct.
those places where you feel like they don't judge you. I don't know how your circles are, but at least, like, I always am like, I care about, people that I feel like they don't judge me. They
Yes.
are there for me. They're listening to me. They're actually like following up. And sometimes it takes you trying to be that friend for someone else to then receive a friend like that,
Yeah.
So, like, you're doing that for someone else, how you said, like, you reaching out to them, and then that goes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are other things that you feel like that can help support, for us to talk more about men's mental health? Because, like how you said, I believe that there's a lot of more resources or ways that women get help,
Yes.
or that bring that awareness. Like, even for example, like, as simple as breakups, I know so many podcast pages that support women in breakups,
Mm-hmm.
and I can say that I haven't personally found one that's for guys. And I know that they go through the same thing. They go through their own uh, variety, or, of a loss. Like, you go through the own grieving process. So, but it's usually not the same support.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they have them, but I think the number one thing is education. Because, like I said earlier, if they don't know, they don't know.
Mhm.
So, if you, for example, if you know more about mental health and how it impacts behaviors and et cetera, and you have a male in your life who don't know, he doesn't know what he's going through in a way. He doesn't know that he's depressed. You have to educate them and kind of like show them, like, what some sort of the things he's experiencing and how severe it is. And then I feel like once you learn more about these things, then it'll be something that you can actually think about. Okay, wow, I didn't know depression was as serious. Maybe I should get some help. I didn't know anxiety was as serious. Maybe I should see a therapist. I feel like education is the number one thing in my opinion. Educate them, help them kind of see the light to see what is going on. Because like I said, a lot of people don't know. They don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you said something earlier that you work with adults that go through addictions or that have addictions. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and inform us on what's really going on when someone has an addiction?
So you have to understand how addiction impacts the brain and behaviors. So for example, like if somebody tries a drug, right? When that happens, like dopamine, the chemical dopamine starts circulating in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I call it the feel good chemical. It's kind of the same, it's kind of the same chemical that happens like when you orgasm during sex, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Feel good, right? But the thing is with substance abuse is like the more you do it, the more you need. So the same level of dopamine that you get, you're gonna have to keep doing the drug over and over to get the same feeling that you did prior. And that's where addiction comes in. You need more of the drug to get the same feeling that you did in the beginning. And that's why the addiction starts taking control of your life. And it's a strong thing, the addiction, and it really can ruin lives, you know. So the thing with people who have addictions, I tell people all the time, like I try to educate families as much as I can, because on countless occasions I'll be working with someone and I'll talk to their family members, and like during the family session, for example, and they'll say things like, "Why don't you just stop, or just stop using, or it's not that hard to just stop. Like put down the alcohol, stop doing the cocaine." But it's not that simple. If they could, I'm sure they would, right? So that's another thing that people need to learn, is to educate themselves on how the addiction is really stopping people from a lot of things in their life, you know? So it's not as easy as just stopping. That's like saying to somebody who's depressed, just stop being sad. Is that fair? No, it's the same thing. And the thing with addiction, people have to view it as a disease, right? It's just like somebody who has diabetes or somebody who has cancer. Are you going to shame somebody for having diabetes? I doubt it. Are you going to shame someone for having cancer? No. Addiction is a disease. And I think a lot of people have the stigma around it because they don't view it as a disease, but it's a disease. That's why people go to rehab, because it's a clinical need. People get FMLA, which is the medical leave, because it's an actual clinical, you know, disease that you have to address. So that's the thing with addiction. It's not just stop. It's not just put the bottle down. No, the brain has been changed and altered, and it can take a long time for it to get. I don't know if it gets to completely where it was in the beginning, but it can't. There's a lot of studies out there, but you know, it can't get close to where it was. But it takes a very long time to get that. A very long time of sobriety to get that. You know.
Yeah. What would you say is like, how do you know that someone's addicted to something? Because, you know, especially over the years, people with drinking, you know, it's like, oh, well, I like drink every day, you know, or they like smoke, or they, you know, watch porn, or there's different addictions. There's so many, but like, how do you know that something's an addiction level?
Like for yourself, or like somebody you're witnessing?
Both.
So when it starts to negatively impact your life, that's one of the keys. And when you notice like you can't stop even if you want to, that's another indication, right? So for example, like if if I have a drinking problem, right? And I know like, hey, if I pick up this bottle, something bad might happen, and you still do it, you might have an addiction. And you have to understand, like one thing I want to make sure I don't forget to say, people who have addictions, right? Drugs and alcohol, a lot of times, like when they get deep into it, a lot of times they're not using the drug and alcohol to get high anymore or to get drunk. Sometimes they're using it to avoid sickness or withdrawals, because withdrawals are so severe, it can really make you feel like you're dying, right? It's really bad for some people when they go through withdrawals. A lot of times they're using to avoid withdrawals, right? And that's where you get stuck in the cycle, because you really want to stop using, but you have to, because if you don't, you're gonna feel like crap, and you might feel like you're dying because of the withdrawal is so bad. So you have to keep using, and that's where addiction gets very complicated, because it's not just, you know, put the bottle down, put the drugs down. There's withdrawals. There's, you know, the addiction part where your brain is craving for it. The cravings happen, and cravings can happen even if you're sober for like 5 years, you're gonna experience cravings during those 5 years, and the cravings are severe because it's basically your brain telling you let's use, let's use, let's use. It's like trying to pull you to it. And if you're not somebody who can fight those thoughts and don't let it win, you're gonna relapse. And just like we talked about the suicide, how it's so high with men, relapse from drugs and alcohol is significantly high. Like I said, every year different numbers, but I think the last time I seen was 70%, 75% relapse rate. So it's high as well, and that's because those cravings are so powerful. So addiction is complicated. So if you don't know much about it and you have somebody who's going through it, do some research, do some readings, do your Googles, ask somebody who knows more about it. Because if you educate yourself, you'll see how those people, they're not trying to be a bad person and they're not trying to turn their back on their family, but they're battling a disease that's literally impacting their life in a negative way. So it's a lot deeper than it.
Yeah, I've heard people say that, like, why do they choose alcohol over me? Or why do they choose drugs over me? And it's really, it feels like that. And I can imagine that it looks, like that for a child, for a significant other, for a family member. But I know it's way deeper than that. Like how you said, it's a disease. When you were talking about the withdrawals, I just watched a movie like a few days ago called like 4 Days. I think that's what it's called. It's with Mila Kunis. And she's going through the withdrawal of heroin. And so she's trying to make it to 4 days sober to get like a certain medication that she needs. And so it's crazy because it's just 4 days of not using, but she's like going insane. Like she's literally going insane. Like she's like throwing up. She has fever, like can't move. Like it was just very like heart-wrenching to watch, because it was just seeing like another perspective of it versus what we assume, especially if you've never dealt with addiction, which a lot of people, Yeah,
that's why it's dangerous to withdraw on your own. That's why I said withdraw. I'm sorry. That's why it's dangerous to detox on your own. I'm not withdraw, to detox on your own, because it's so dangerous. Like when you try to detox without medical help, you can have seizures. You can even die. So it's very dangerous to try to detox on your own, like that movie, like the movie you're watching. So it's not recommended by medical professionals. If you have an addiction and you're trying to get off the drug, you need to be medically detoxed, like medically supervised at a facility, so you don't die or you don't have a seizure or nothing bad happens on your own, because those things can happen. So you need to be very careful of trying to do that by yourself.
What have you found is some underlying issues that cause addiction?
There's a ton of underlying issues. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I first started working with someone, that's the number one thing I asked them. Like, have you thought about the underlying issue? And if they have it, that's something we'll definitely address in sessions. So it's not just the addiction part where your brain is addicted to the substance. There's other, like you mentioned, there's other issues as well that's correlated to the substance abuse, right? So it might be stress, it might be marital issues, it might be depression, it might be anxiety, it might be trauma. That's a big one as well. So there's a variety of things that are all in the circle of the addiction. And, just the addiction itself is not solely the reason. Big chunk, absolutely. But there's a variety of reasons, like I just mentioned, that contributes to the continued use.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we usually just look at the symptom. Like we only look at the one thing, like, oh, they drink too much or whatever, but it's like what's causing them, or like what triggers them to do that too. Because sometimes it becomes.
Yes, you have to look at, the underlying, it's sometimes it's deeper than you think, right? So when you just try to address a symptom and the underlying issues gets unaddressed, and they leave the facility and they go back home to the toxic relationship, and next thing you know, they're drinking again because the toxic relationship was never addressed. So you have to address each aspect of it. It's not just a one thing. It's not just a symptom. It's a variety of things that has to be addressed in sessions and with other resources that's going to help them fight the addiction in totality. So that's a really good thing you brought up.
So we talked a lot about mental health, a little bit about your story, which I really appreciate you sharing, and about addiction. Is there any last words that you have to say when it comes to just overall mental health, or even men specific?
Well, what I would say to people out there is just, if you need help, Because the thing is, what I've learned is you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. Like I've heard people divorce from that. Like I worked with a young lady. She had to leave her husband because she tried her hardest to get him the help, but he did not want it, refused it, and therefore there's not much she could have done, right? So don't be afraid to get help, right? And if you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it, right? And for the guys out there, you have to be transparent if you're experiencing any sort of negative thoughts, if you're not feeling like yourself, if you've been through some trauma that's never been told. Transparency is going to be key, and be honest with those that you trust, and then they can help you get the help you need because they have a better understanding of what's going on. You can't be mad at somebody for not doing anything if they don't know. If I don't know you went through trauma, if I didn't know this happened to you when you were 15, then you can't be mad at them because they didn't know. If they do know, that's a whole different story. So being honest with those in your inner circle, your loved ones, is going to be crucial as well. Don't be afraid to get help. For the parents out there, be very cautious when it comes to your children, because a lot of kids go through the same things and they don't say anything. So you're going to have to be involved and be aware of like, kind of like some of the symptom behaviors. So symptom behaviors are basically just like, if you notice like your daughter is acting a little strange, she's not being herself, she's doing things out of the ordinary, those are symptom behaviors. That lets you know that things are off a little bit, and I need to go sit down with her like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? So parents, do that with your kids. And one thing I've been talking to with some of the parents I work with is parents also I don't know if friends is the right word, but you have to know the parents of your kids' friends. And the reason I say that is I've noticed how a lot of kids and teenagers, they might be going through a lot of things like mentally, and they don't speak that or tell that to their own parents, but they'll tell their friend Bobby or their friend Liz. And they might tell Liz, I want to kill myself, but they're not going to tell their parents that, right? And I tell parents to be friends or have a relationship with your kids' friends' parents, because Liz told her friend that, and that friend might tell her parents. And next thing you know, if you have a relationship with those parents, you guys can also keep in contact. And hey, I didn't know that, but thank you for telling me, because that's something she never told me. So you can save your kid's life. So be involved in that aspect as well, because a lot of kids, they're not going to tell you everything, but they might tell their friends because they feel comfortable with their friends. They might not want to tell mom, I'm cutting myself, or things like that. So just remember, parents, like if you have, kids and teenagers, they go through things themselves. So you have to be able to know or try your best to kind of figure out things that they're either not telling you or hiding you to the best of your ability, kind of just to save them if they need saving.
That's a very good point, because I feel like the most transparency will always be with their friends, and then that makes so much more sense. And that is the involvement of the parent. And even the parents that create that space to talk about those things, like how you said earlier, like the more that you're able to like bring those conversations up, then people are able, of course, not all the time, because I know amazing parents that they try to do their best, and that didn't always work out for them. But I know that starting the conversation and you reflecting it for your children is also number one. So thank you so much for sharing, Donald. Where can people connect with you?
My job is currently in Plant City. So if you live like in near Tampa area, Plant City area, and someone who might need help with substance abuse or mental health help, so you can always reach me via email, dsims@wstampa.com. That's my email. You can reach me there. My Instagram is kind of like for just friends and stuff, but you can just shoot me a DM through social media on Instagram at Simmy5, SIMMYCINCO.
Thank you so much, Donald. I really appreciate you educating us and then also inspiring us with your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.